Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Sue, your 2022 Oakland mayoral candidate, and this is for an exclusive for Zenny 62 Media. As you know, I'm the dark horse mayoral candidate for the Oakland race, and so as a candidate who's not really expected to do well, it leaves me opportunities to talk about things that need to be talked about here in Oakland. And today what I want to talk about is the Oakland Police Department and the federal oversight, which is now on probation for 1 year. And that's a huge step forward for Oakland Police Department. I knew that they had actually completed a majority of all of the 50 changes that were in the document that needed to be changed, including the culture. And the culture is changed because there's virtually nobody there from 20 years ago, and those that are now they were part of the change back then and brought forward the changes that Oakland needed to get off federal oversight. So congratulations, LaRon Armstrong. I really love that. You stood up, fought for the officers here in Oakland, but also what I wanted to do as the dark horse candidate, I can touch a third rail issue here in Oakland, and that's how do we get a hold of the crime and criminals and the murder rates and everything here in Oakland. And number one thing that we all have to come to realize, we can't buy our way out of this. There's always going to be more criminal activity and more criminals than we have police officers that can be dedicated to dealing with crime. And so another issue that we have here with our police force is that 80% of our police officers do not live in Oakland. Many live Fairfield, and some as far away as Sacramento. So we're talking at least an hour and a half response time from officers who live very far away from Oakland when they're needed for emergencies such as active shooter scenarios and very high volatile situations. And because there are regulations and laws that prevent cities like Oakland to compel their primary and first responders to live in Oakland, they are not compelled to. They can live anywhere they want. And so that creates the other problem of officers hurting folks in the community that probably shouldn't have been killed or violently detained. And so we need another security. And this is where you and I, Zenny and I, had spoken about my stance on concealed carry weapons permits, otherwise known as CCWs. And CCWs here in California are extremely rare to get, and those that do get them are usually closely aligned with certain parties, like we saw down in San Jose. There was pay to play through Lori Smith's office, the sheriff's office of San Jose, and so, or Santa Clara County, I should say, and so that creates a big problem. You know, I myself, I have been a CCW carrier since 1990, and I've abided by all the laws, requirements, background checks, and mental evaluations, annual mental evaluations. I have to do it every year to maintain my CCW as a holder. And so I want to bring those same requirements and same background checks and same mental evaluations to a new security force, which now becomes your first responders, and they actually live in Oakland. These folks, which we'll be calling community safety officers, community safety response teams, SRTs, community SRTs. In my line of work, counterterrorism, we had SRTs, and these were the ones that really went into different situations of unknown character, but they were equipped to handle pretty much any situation that may arise. And these become the first responders. And here's where the CCW comes into play, to make sure that a visual weapon does not escalate a situation. That's the purpose of a CCW, because they can simply keep it hidden from plain sight through jackets, through shirts. I been able to conceal mine even with a basic t-shirt, and so they work very well using the white bright weapons. And this the reason why I bring that up is because there's some situations where a first responder is going to encounter, and then where there was previously no threat of violence or a violent situation now has escalated for whatever reason to a violent situation where the person is now armed with a dangerous weapon and threatening. And so this allows our first responder, our SRT, to protect themselves. And that's what's been missing here in Oakland, because we've had a lot of folks, individuals that took kind of some laws into their own hand, protecting property of theirs or of somebody that they knew, and ended up being shot or killed, or being an innocent bystander on the street because they were being robbed, and those criminals have raised that level of criminality to a new level of terrorism. And that's where, again, I specialize in. And so this SRT team is your first responders. They're equipped for the mental crises when people have mental issues and acting irrationally. First responders, along with our new Oakland macro program. So there are professionals along with the security response teams to assist the safety of macro, because that's one of the missing elements that I have been talking about for the workers of macro. And these are the firefighters. They're going to be stationed in all the fire stations, and our SRTs. Now here's the good part about being an SRT. While we cannot in the Oakland City budget for these additional officers, and I place a number for each district of 60 security officers, community safety officers for each district, and Oakland has 7. So 60, up to 60 in each district. That would be divide the 60 by 4, because that's 4 shifts, and you have round the clock coverage plus days off are covered, which is that 4th shift. And so these are things that have to be taken into consideration, and these are folks that are now embedded in our community. And here's where the community land trust comes into play. While Oakland cannot afford to pay these community safety officers what they pay Oakland police officers to do, they have very similar training. In fact, the community safety officers will be better trained than most of Oakland police officers, because one of their primary skills, not only are they armed with a gun, they also carry pepper spray and they have to be a specialist in a martial arts for non-lethal engagements. And so knife fights, things like that, those are kind of specialties that I learned through martial arts eskrima. And so that's one of those martial arts that I would encourage our community safety officers to look at, because it specifically trains you in martial arts, but also using bladed weapons, batons, and things that hurt a lot, we'll say. And these are the new levels, because in counterterrorism, we have what is called a tiered terrorism. And so we each time the criminals go up in their terrorist acts, we elevate the safety officers and the policing that goes along with that. And so the police officers are no longer forced to deal with the mental crisis issues. They're not the first on scene on a domestic violence in most cases, unless there is a weapon involved, and a lot of other issues are taken away from the Oakland police officers, and because they don't live here in Oakland, the importance of these community safety officers is paramount, because they are part of that district. They are part of that community. And it's more likely that they've already encountered the problem in a lesser fashion, or have more knowledge on the person than what police officers currently have, which is in most cases none. And so these community safety officers are called in at the same time on the scene, and they are the ones that provide additional information that could be crucial to life and death. So this is one of the proposals that I have, and this can actually be paid for very simply with a lot of the projects embedded into programs and projects that I have going for Oakland. And these officers, these community safety officers, they are embedded, like I said, in each district through either the Tiny Home Village program that is currently underway here in Oakland, or through a community land trust property, such as a single family home that has been taken off the market, but transferred into the Oakland Community Land Trust for safekeeping, and those become the properties and the homes for those safety officers. And that was part of their compensation package, because we'll have to negotiate a starting salary, but housing, low to no cost housing, is embedded as part of their compensation package. So this is one way to compel a safety organization specifically for the neighborhoods of Oakland, and each one will have approximately 12 to 15 community safety officers that are always within the district. And another part of their compensation package is an EV, an electric vehicle, that they have use of 24/7, because they can be called up at any time when needed. And then there's going to be a schedule that they're going to be working with. And this community safety, the SRT, is accountable and overseen by the Oakland Police Department. And so they're not a renegade, they're not vigilantes, but these are citizens that actually live here in Oakland that want to ensure that Oakland survives and deals with the crime and the terrorists in a positive manner. And by having more safety and security officers, that's more eyes to keep you safe. So that's one of my proposals here for Oakland, and improving safety and security. I would like to see Councilmember Lauren Taylor, Councilmember Sheng Tao, Councilmember Shiva Reed. What are your proposals on saving Oakland, reducing crime, reducing the murder rate, break-ins, thefts, robberies, the van terrorism groups that come into Oakland and steal in mass quantities. What are your plans on addressing the criminal activity and the terrorist acts that are going on around Oakland? Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.